Hi, everybody. Hope everyone is doing well and staying safe and trying to calm down after last night's silliness in terms of our friends and compatriots in the South, keeping in mind that anything in the world can happen. I have a couple of questions that are very close to each other. One is, what actually is love and its interplay in humanity? And the other one is it possible for an individual to bring in more love in their lifetime? So I'm going to try and answer this relative to what I understand and consider it from your perspectives and see how it works. First of all, what I have to talk about is there is an internal flow, a universal flow that I'm calling love. And it occurs in everyone's interaction, no matter who you are. I would submit all through the universe, any life form. And the relationship that it has with each and every one of us is that there's an obligation through loving to enable the best it can, each individual to, and there's a huge range, to begin to perceive and understand how they function in the world. From my perspective, this is giving us as individuals in humanity a tremendous amount of leeway and freedom and patience and compassion. And the least is, in my opinion, that there is basically no judgment whatsoever. People don't always agree with that statement, but nonetheless, that's how I'm saying it. And there's that universality within us comes into us through often what we call the soul, or what I'm calling a sequence of centers or chakras, sephiroth, valves, that are literally there to protect us and to make contact with us. So what that really means is, in a kind of a way, your personality literally is involved with tuning into not that version of loving, but your version of loving. And so that's how that expression of love engages with us. And what the heck does that mean? Well, what it means is, as these chakras or sephiroth or whatever you want to call them, valves, I like that better, but it's only a liking, doesn't mean much. It allows energy to come in that enables us to engage with an awareness, a conscious awareness of what we are inside relative to our location, our culture, our nation, rules and regulations all around in humanity, or in one version of humanity versus some other. And there's no versus in it, really. It's more, this is how you engage with life under these circumstances. And you do what you can to handle the amount of energy that's coming into you through these valves, through these chakras. And then, as a human being, you decide how valuable you are based on how you use the word love and its meaning and how one should be in it and why they should be this way. And you're cultivating a whole ladder of understandings that relate primarily to the way you think the world should be according to you. And of course, since I'm the speaker, then according to what you think things should be like in the world. You do the judging. And as a matter of fact, if you really understood that, you wouldn't be judging at all. You would be attempting to perceive, understand, and try to soften down your reflexes towards how you see the world so you could understand you better and therefore begin to understand others better. That would be an act of love or an act of compassion or an act of caring for somebody, no matter who they are. And somebody would be any other human being alive or dead for that matter, or to come for that matter. This is very difficult. So let me try and talk a little bit about that kind of semi-rendering, meaning ultimately tremendous levels of love can operate through you if you basically in your personality can handle that deep, deep level of compassion and understanding and loving that is different than how you believe life should be, others should be, you should be, whatever that may mean. And we're obviously trained to align with rules and regulations based on the meanings that we can give it, or our parental background gave it, or our national background or cultural background gave it. And we're under great stress to do so. And we don't realize that. But, for example, let's try and follow a little bit, just a rendering of how it would be if your root center was on really, really strong and energy was primarily powerful in that area, and your level of loving then might be, since it's close to this plane of existence, very coarse plane, it would be relative to how you saw things, what must be true to make you right. If you have a different kind of training, what must be true to make you wrong. How you invalidate or validate your relationship with you as an individual. If indeed the gonad center was a dominant center, you would be doing something very similar because these two centers are very closely related. And in our world, that would mean that your will would be naturally involved with reflex responses about the validity of you. And that would mean that your primary relationship with loving would still be in relationship to you. You love you the way you think the world should be. You love you the way you protect and willfully engage with the world the way you believe it has to be. Otherwise, somehow there's something wrong with you. And this is not real. This is very illusory. Because many, many people have different views about how a person should be. This includes spiritual domains, by the way. If you are engaged with the solar plexus as a major handler of energy coming into it, and that would be linking with the root in the gonad center, that would mean that your personality, you have a fairly strong personality, Energy can also be moving into the heart region or the throat region or the brow region or the crown region. And as a matter of fact, in some schools of thought, if the energy is moving right from the root center all the way up to the top of the head, and the major thruster there is the root center, then you're somehow superior to other people. That is a traditional way of being self-loved. Whether you have a title or not, it just doesn't make any difference. If the solar plexus, root, and gonad center, all three of those are quite strongly engaged with these planes and can handle what you would call survival on these planes fairly well, and it still moves up to the top of the head, the ground center, in some schools, you are definitely extremely able, and you will be considered able, and at the same time, you will also consider yourself very, very valuable, very, very important. It's in the lower stages of the brow center, there is a focus on the ability that a person has of being very able to see into different levels of perhaps another level, let's say, of function on the emotional level, one could say, or the etheric level or magnetic level of your existence, because you're an energy being, remember, and you have these close affiliations with function, how you do things, the intensity that you use. And if your sight is stimulated into another level, or you have the ability to do something different than the world natural five senses that other people have, you have another sense or so, you're considered valuable, very important. If you yourself think you're very wonderful and valuable for it, you're still on those coarser levels, no matter how able you are beyond that. The issue is not about you in relationship to this loving energy that comes through. That loving energy comes through to help you to see you and how you function. And it has a tremendous amount of respect and love for you. And that capacity that it has, that love that it has for you, is reverted into this form, which is part of it. And you are then using that to love the form instead of loving the love or the universality of its existence. It's, you can tell it's difficult to express that in terms of words, but I'm doing the best I can. If you saw yourself doing these things, then you could learn to pull back and be compassionate for others who, from your perception, have less perception than you. Eventually, a coarser reference point, you would say, oh, well, they're not very able. And a non-coarse level says, as much as I know, they don't have the same capacity as I do, but I wonder if they have other capacities that I don't have and I can't perceive. That would be another level of compassion. That would mean that your heart center, at a deeper internal level that was linking with your personality, because you're using your personality, root, gonad, solar plexus, is turned on so that you are getting to the point where you understand there is more to a deeper level of perception than the gradation system that you have previously had. This is very difficult for us. We would battle this kind of thinking simply because we don't want to feel ourselves that we're not as able as we've already considered ourselves. And this is based on the coarser levels, moving up the ladder of engagement with loving slowly, so that you can begin to be consciously aware beyond what you could be aware of before. Consciously aware beyond the levels of awareness that you had before. Internally, where the mind blossoms and opens because you begin to learn to watch what's going on inside the circuitry system that you have, that you're a part of, these chakras, Sephiroth, valves, whatever you want to call them, and they're opening, shifting, interacting with each other, always with the idea, because this interaction is based on the love that's deep down within us, that we can only use to some degree because we are so vulnerable, literally vulnerable. We want to be worthy, valued by others. And this is natural for us. This is not some weird thing. This is just normal. And so if we could watch this in play and understand it, we begin to notice generally everyone seems to be doing something not the same, but similar, because there is a kind of reference point that goes on related to love. Love is fully and completely without the necessity of passing an examination. It's not something that we do. It's something that it is doing, this flow. All right. So we meet a person and they seem to have similar engagements with us. We don't know that for sure, but we kind of like them. We can't figure out why. That's one way to look at it. That's on the coarser levels, of course. Could be attractive, something attractive about them that's similar to one of our family members. It could be that they speak better than we do, and therefore it would be they would be helpful in relating to you, the two of you as a couple. You could relate better. It could be a thinking process. You have a similar thinking process. You could have a similar emotional disposition. You could have a similar way of seeing other people and pronouncements that are legitimate as far as the both of you are concerned. You have a similar way of seeing the world. And you become closer and you engage. And then you link up with a person as a partner. Or another way, different frequencies operating in through these different centers, from the root, gonad, solar plexus, heart, throat, brow, and crown, are slightly different. And one person has more energy coming in through, let's say, a throat center, another through a brow center, another through a heart center. And you're helping each other, literally, by a transmission that occurs unknown to us. Of course, it's not in our verbiage, and it's not in the way we think things should be to make us feel comfortable. Heavenly day. That wouldn't make too much sense to us. But a different frequency operating in you, let's say in your solar plexus, and someone has that frequency functioning from, let's say, a brow center. And your brow center has its opening and it's very capable on these coarser levels, but it needs to be broadened out a little bit more so it can understand deeper your relationship with these planes. These planes are early young planes that we are growing in. In other words, we are young in these planes. We cannot perceive well this universality. But boy, we can assess, come up with different ideas about this level of engagement, these planes. We're very good at that. We're creative, very theoretical. There's nothing wrong with that. And suddenly, one of these people were transmitting with their solar plexus into this other person, enables this energy to break through and come up in another person and open their brow differently than it was before, and vice versa, with the other person helping them open their throat more and therefore learning how to soften down a will aspect that might have been harsher previously and now is a little bit softer. But the engagement that we have with loving our personalities the way it was, an act of love, by the way, and protecting them and not wanting to shift or change them, an act of love, by the way. Strange love, but nonetheless. That act is helpful. So marginally or quite a bit or in the middle someplace, that individual's throat center begins to open where it wasn't very open before. They were operating from a very will orientation in their solar plexus or root or gonad center. Individuals who come together often are seeking to shift internally these centers so that they can be better equipped to handle the love that can come in from a deeper level in a wiser way than they previously could. And we all know that wisdom is relative, the same as love is relative. Same as belief is relative. We believe relative to what we think must be true. Each of us has a different story on these things because we have stories of life that have affected us and therefore constructed systems that are measuring and measured in terms of what we value and how we want to be valued. This goes on with everyone, everywhere. And we begin to learn about this as we slowly begin to perceive these systems in operation, at least to some degree. Early goings in a whole species are really important because they are acts of love. The shifting in a species is an act of love from higher states that enable the species to become aware of how they function, not aware of a theory, aware of how they function, even intermittently with each other. Because, like knowledge itself, pieces of knowledge stick together and you get a 25, 30, 40, 50 pieces of knowledge, and suddenly an individual makes some sense of this relative to the sticking together of that knowledge. This is how love is as well. It's a most beautiful thing But in the early going, which we are about, we have statements that are attached to the loving. Those statements are reflexive at first, and they have no awareness whatsoever. Ultimately, you slowly begin to understand the depth of what the idea of loving means. Loving is something that goes beyond the limitations of how we engage and speak about others. For example, if you, whoever you are walking down the street and you pass an individual on the street, I'll give two examples in reverse, and suddenly you are warm, hot. It's a cool day. You can't figure out why you're warm or hot. And you don't know what that is, but it's kind of, it can be nice or it can be a threat. Oh my God, am I coming down with something? Or, oh my God, that's lovely. I'm just, wow, really soft and cuddly and gentle inside. My words, I'm just trying to explain what that might feel like to different people, maybe. That individual who passes you, you have no awareness that that individual may have had his or her heart center open, or solar plexus open, or brow or throat or whatever open, and energy wafted, and I mean wafted through it gently and engage with you. And in your understanding of it, your focus is all on you and what's going on in you, because it's natural that interpretation of love would be relative to you, an individual who's experiencing something relative to how you normally function in the world. Well, how you normally function in the world, you're a sensing mechanism. You have these senses, whatever they are. I don't care, 7, 8, well, I don't care what they are. But if you're perceiving something, you'll perceive it in you, through you, on your body, or around you. You take a measure of, or perceiving with any of the extended senses that you may have. All right. Well, even a reaction to what I just said, you would be protecting your sensing mechanism and how valuable you are for having it. That is a natural rendering of love. Think about this. It's a natural rendering of love and all that you can handle under those circumstances. Therefore, protection comes into play. You're protecting your version of how you perceive you in relationship to how you believe you function. And that is how we do it. That happens because one of your centers, or 3 of your centers, root, gonad, or solar plexus, are stimulated to do exactly that. You've trained them to reflexively respond to something that is a threat to what you believe must be valid. That's an act of love on your part, for you, usually unconsciously. It's not you don't regret those things. You start looking for them. Say, oh my God, I do that. I wonder why. Then leave it alone. It'll happen again. It may happen for similar things, may not. And you may begin not to agree with it. That disagreement may be an act of love as well, because you want to broaden out your relationship with you so that you can understand the world better by understanding you as well. So this other question comes up. is it possible for you, me, anybody, to have more love come in to you and be expressed through you in this lifetime? And my answer to that is yes. Any shift that you have in any of these centers, as they, if you remember, as they always join together, it's like a family. These 7, 10, and so many more than that. All of these valves, they work together constantly. The effects of these things operate on the externals, and we call it a personality. It's really energy coming together for a purpose that relates to the images that you can allow yourself to engage with for a purpose relative to understanding you and being engaged and being okay with you, but not necessarily agreeing with you all the time. Sounds almost too mature. But maturity isn't the case here. We're talking about love. The dilemma with this is, if a center opens, I don't care what center it is, the root, the gonad, solar plexus, throat center, heart center, brow center, crown centers, and any accompanying centers off the body, because they're not only in the etheric body. This is just something that people have put together because they could see these things. They're beyond that as well. So here's a dilemma. If one of these systems opens differently than it could be opened before, and you still have the ability to handle being relatively comfortable within you, with your personality and the way you're beginning to notice more things, because your perception is increasing somewhat, then more love can operate through you. And it does, because it, let's say, almost coagulates, almost brings things together differently and holds it there for a bit, and you experience that, and then you react to it because you want to get back into thinking and being the way you were before, but you don't, and then you do, and you don't, and you do, and suddenly you begin to realize, you smile a bit and say, wow, phew, last week that was difficult, but I'm fine now. I'm okay. I think I'm almost the way I was before. Well, you don't say those things because you don't notice those things. God forbid we talk like that. But if more energy is there, more love can be allowed to come in and through. It is not only for the purpose of you being important, but it's for the purpose of helping others. It will flow through you in a way that is relevant to it, not you being the one who is great because it happens, or great because, and in some cases this can happen, you can cultivate a method of transmitting energy. God, why would you want to do that unless you're able to do it with respect to the universal flow? And I think that's a very able being. And I'm not talking about thinking you're using that universal energy. Don't forget, it's coming in, but it's being almost transformed into a form that relates to how you act out physically, emotionally, and mentally, and how the 2, 3 come together. And as a part of a formation of a system that can be used to be helpful on these planes by having that universal love operate through you relative to the need of another. In other words, using certain frequencies that might be helpful to another and not using some frequencies that wouldn't help another. So gently engaging in a more respectful, balanced, gentle, softer way, as you can hear me saying those words, we don't always act that way, but the energy itself can flow that way. The personality, the energy that moves through your personality will flow like your personality. There's no negation with that. That's the system, the loving system that is constructed in you, those images, those flows of energy for the purpose of being the way you were trained to be. That's an act of love on the level of a deeper level. The second level of acting love there is an increase in perception so that you can begin to notice that that's true. Another level of loving is that you begin to look and say, ooh, kind of wish I hadn't have done that. I thought it was the right way. And then 1 second after, I realized, my God, what am I doing? This doesn't make any sense to me. There's two levels of function there. There's one that relates to you having an insight or an inner sight that says, my God, this may not be helpful either to me or to them. The next one may be, I don't care. I really want to do it this way. And usually that happens when you're really scared or reactive, angry in some way, where you are unable to think, you're only able to go into the basic root reaction or basic protective reaction state. This is not a negative thing. This is a learned survival system. And it can be only by you, relatively speaking, it can be gentled by you. But you're the one that's a part of being okay with that. If you're not okay with that, you will be battling all the time not to notice and not to attempt to gentle so that you can understand deeper your relationship with you and your relationship with others in our species. These two questions are really difficult to answer, but they're really important questions. I in no way think I've given a perfect answer. I do know that what I have talked about makes some sense to me because of my experience, and the experience of others as well. But it's a dilemma. I'm sure some of you out there, in my opinion, probably all of us out here, have run into periods of time where we don't feel very loving. And those moments right there, those particular moments, are moments where we're under some kind of personalized pressure. And awkward, I might say, attempt to bring in strange, coming from a guy, one could say, ha, or anyone who has a strong disposition, try loving yourself right there. Ignore you. I don't know, put your hands around like this. Get into a room by yourself and see if you can get out of your natural reflexive positioning. Those positionings drive more power or more universal flow or universal love into what you're focused on. And if you're focused on being right, wrong, good, bad, whatever it happens to be, and the world is whatever, then you're just going to get more of that, because that validates the images. And you're giving love to those images. That's what validation means. You're loving your thing, your way of engaging, or the way that you mimic from others. It's an act of love, but it's not very loving with respect to others. If you want to be loving to yourself, try to see it. It's very difficult to see. Don't give up on you. And if that loving is not judging you, try not to judge yourself for it. It's not a matter of judging, it's a matter of how can I shift that, even for a second? Oh, 10 seconds. We'll give it more than 1 second. Sometimes you haven't got a second. It's normal for us. We're called human beings. That's what we're called. And whatever mental or illusory state levels you think you're in relative to others, try to find a place to let that go. You have that because you have a belief system about how valuable you are, or invaluable you are, or not valuable. And in fact, everyone is valuable. Because that universality, that universal loving is in everybody. What it's used for by the individual is relative to the individual's place within them and what they can handle in the world. The world is not easy to be in from time to time. Your assessment of another person when they're in that state isn't helping them. And it comes out of fear. You're afraid or glad that you're not in that same kind of state. It's a scary thing. But it means you are giving love to yourself, elevation to yourself, however you want to put it, so that you can feel more secure. Love is a very interesting thing. It can be overwhelmingly profound, where when it's in you, you can't think of another thing. Nothing is more profound than it. Now, no one would like to hear that because we have chartered references here. No one likes to think that their dearest friend would not think of them when they are thinking, when that love is in them. But it doesn't have anything to do with personalization. It has only to do with flow. And you are loving, when you are loving that flow that's in you, you are loving every flow that is within every individual, anywhere, with no doubt. As you can see, talking about this particular subject is not the easiest thing in the world, but nonetheless, a very valuable thing. If you just take a few moments on your own time and consider it for yourself, you'll begin to realize the level of tremendous depth that loving is a part of. And quite reasonably, how we use it in its most surface levels because that's where we are. It is not negative to do so. It's where we are and where we're learning and where we're attempting to understand the nature of that universality that is a part of everyone, no matter what they believe, no matter what whoever believes it only is in one part of the world versus another, all of this sort of stuff. This is us and our defense of what we believe should be true because we're us. And that means we are in a coarser level of loving. A coarser level of loving is natural in our slow groping, no offense to anybody, or movement towards a much deeper level of understanding. And the hope that we can be a part of that longer than theories, broader than seconds, deeper than our wildest anticipations. I think that's about all I'm going to do on that subject. And I know it's only 10, oh, it's not even 10 to. But I think there's enough there for some thinking anyway. And remember, loving is experiential. Just to keep that in mind. And that includes our emotions. It includes our physical form. Well, that's a touchy subject, perhaps for another time, maybe. But also it includes the first levels of emotional mind or intellectual considerations. But there are higher levels on each of those forms. Higher levels of the physical, higher levels of the emotional, higher levels of the mental planes. This is well anticipated by many people. It's not news. And also, keeping in mind that our energetic system is very porous. One could say that if you have a thought, for example, about someone, that thought travels. Fortunately, for most of us, we're not aware of these things. If you have an emotion about another person, that emotional thought or feeling travels. It also engages in you. And it becomes bigger because you've made it a thought that was important for 10 seconds, whatever it is. This whole relationship with energy, emotionally, mentally, and physically, is profound. We can't consider ourselves walking down the street as a cloud of, or let's say just like a cloud. We don't see things that way. Our brain is set up that way. The occipital cortex, the prefrontal cortex, is set up to bring information back so that we can get an idea about what we're seeing in a nanosecond. And then it's the responsibility of the personality to look at it and say, yes, that's true. Or no, that's not so true. It may look that way, but it may not be exactly that way when we're dealing with other people or ourselves. But we sometimes do that. We say, whatever comes into my mind, I know it must be right. But that's related to some of the stuff that I'm talking about, the root center, the gonad center, solar plexus, and the need we have to protect ourselves and be of some value unto ourselves. This is not something that people don't know, but may not have realized it simply because it's most likely unconscious. It's reflexive, very quick, very, very fast. Loving even that within us, but not necessarily agreeing with it, enables us to recognize that we're still journeying towards a broader perspective, a more universal willingness to go a little beyond what we already come up with, so that we can not only anticipate, but recognize our relationship within ourselves of a loving flow that doesn't give up on us, no matter how we tend to get it, let's say, imperfectly. And that's really a good place to finish, I think, because imperfection is the most consistent thing that we're about. And learning about that and the great love that that deeper level has within us to help us to move towards learning instead of only dealing with stereotypical kinds of things that we are used to. Not bad, not good, just used to. So I wish everyone well with that. And here we go. We're going to try and do some meditating. I wish you well. It doesn't go away. Thanks, everybody, and good evening. And you can just begin to do the balancing and grounding on your own, and have a good evening and a good weekend. Bye for now.